Hey. Hey, cool. I'll see what this actually looks like when we get done. Okay. So CJ said that the mic quality was crap on the last one, so I upped the resolution on the mic. So we'll see if that changes things. Okay. So so far we've been kind of dancing around this test. And the reason why I put a lot of these key terms up here with this idea of versus self versus not self is that probably this is the most true, which takes a lot of fun out of the science of doing this, is that can you completely just change who yourself is?
Yes.
Yeah, well, how do you change yourself? Well, you could change your group, but you can also change this thing that we've been talking about a lot, your role. Okay, so you can, by changing your role, all of a sudden it changes your group. We see a lot of people like, quote, grow up, unquote. And what that means is that your life roles change. And as soon as your life roles change, why would they say you grew up? Different responsibilities. And if you embrace those responsibilities and have efficacy, you change your role. And it's very kind of fun to watch. I get to see a lot of young punk kids. I had a student, Christina. Was it Christina? Christina with a K. She graduated high school. Her and her friends got an apartment together in El Cajon, saying, F you, Mom. They all enrolled in college. They were all living in their own apartment. They were basically filming their own sitcom. Not literally, but in their heads. What happened about week 3 into the semester? 3 weeks. They made it. 3 weeks to the end of the month. They all had money for rent. They were all working. Everything was good. 2 of them couldn't maintain enough hours at work while going to school, so dropped out of school. Christina was able to pick up an extra shift but still keep her classes. But her 2 roommates were now working, bless you, without going to school. What happened in their apartment, do you think?
Different priorities.
Different realities. And as a result, her two friends were having a great time, partying all the time. She's trying to study. She failed all of her classes in the fall semester. She had to go home. You can file academic renewal. I'm on the petitions committee. We see lots of those. Academic renewal means, I'm sorry, can I please get back into school? If you don't maintain a 2.0, they say, thanks for playing, try again. Anyway, she applied for academic renewal and had to go back home, apologize to her mom, and started school again. Do-over. Okay, and she did. She got her master's degree in psychology, and I have no idea where she is now, but I ran into the grocery store like 2 years ago. So she's very happy and successful. I have no idea what she's doing. But, so it all depends on the role that you choose. This is why I always tell you, if you have a chance to go to a big university, don't commute to a college. I mean, with little people, you can do what you got to do. But if you don't have responsibilities, why go to a big college and go there and embrace the campus? You become much more of a student when you are a part of the university. I came to San Diego State and I lived on campus. I was an Aztec. My wife went there as well, but she went to San Diego State. There's a difference, a different role. Okay, and it's a good thing. Okay, now, so this perspective is full of conjecture, smoke, and mirrors. It's called the psychodynamic perspective. It's all about unconscious. We're going to put some names up here. Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and Karen Horney. It's actually Horney, but she pronounced it Horney, but whatever. So I'm going to put a little asterisk by Karen and Adler because they're what we call neo-Freudians. But they talk about the same basic thing. It says that the psychodynamic approach, these folks talked about this force of your unconscious mind. Now, Sigmund Freud really is the one who made this famous. Sigmund Freud was a neurologist. He studied the brain. A lot of his patients that he studied didn't have anything wrong with them physically, but they were suffering mentally. So he said it must be something in your unconscious mind. Freud focused mostly on repressed emotions. So Freud would say that every one of us has this entire consciousness that's underneath our regular consciousness that is pushing our regular consciousness. And he called this the id. Now, the funny thing is, Freud was a neurologist, but they didn't know about the brain very well back then. They knew about the cortex pretty good, because anytime someone got something stabbed in their head, they could look at it. But do we actually have a primal pleasure center of our brain? Yeah, it's called the nucleus accumbens. It's a part of your brain that releases dopamine. Whenever you do anything that is satisfying, guess what it does? It releases dopamine. Your brain goes, that was good. Like when your leg is stiff and then you stretch it, your brain goes, and it doesn't hurt for a minute. It's just that little feeling. During sexual activity, your brain releases a lot of dopamine. And it's interesting because Freud said that this primal pleasure in little tiny babies is fixated in the mouth. How do you calm a crying baby? A boob or a bottle or a finger. Something. We had the thing called the cork. Or our accountant guy called it a plug. It's a little imitation nipple you stick in their face. Here you go. And the kids, and they fall asleep. Okay? My son was very, very good. He never used a pacifier. He only wanted boob. Good job, buddy. So the only way to pacify him was to nurse him. So I'd have him, and he's all fussy. He's all upset. I hand him to mom. He's like, nurse! Up until about age 2, all he wanted to do was nurse. Well, till 2. The Lecce League will go all the way till 5 or 6. Mom, I'm feeling thirsty. Can I have some boob? Left one's a little dry. Can I have the right? No, I'm cutting that one off there. But, yeah, both of our kids were nursed until 2. Okay, but not for me. My daughter was great because, okay, watch some videos about breast pumping sometime. And it's like a milking machine. You just put it on and it goes, geesh, goosh, geesh, goosh, and milk comes out. Very humiliating for the poor person. You become really a refrigerator at that point in your life. However, what's really cool about it is that I could feed my daughter one feeding with a bottle, and my wife could feed her on the other feeding. And every time my wife would feed, she'd pump on one side and feed the other side. And so every 6 hours, she would feed. Every 6 hours, I would feed for the first couple weeks of my daughter's life. Perfect. My son? No. I would basically get up and walk around in circles. My wife would yell at me for not being able to help. Yay. Okay. So Freud said that what happens is this id causes fixations. What happens, for example, if your id is not satisfied? What is produced?
What does id stand for?
It actually is the word id. It doesn't stand for anything. It's just the id. It's called the id. It's a good Scrabble word, 3 points. Okay? Okay, so fixations. So what would happen? What does this id produce? It produces 2 things. It produces satisfaction. What's the opposite of satisfaction? What's a better word for than dissatisfaction? More than disappointment, it's anxiety. So when you start producing anxiety, the id is the way to reduce that anxiety. So Freud said that this id is unconscious within all of us. And it's constantly driving us to look for satisfaction. I'm going to write a little SP here. An SR. And do what? What causes anxiety? Stimuluses that are punishments. So long before behaviorism ever became a science, Freud said, yeah, this is how it works. We seek satisfaction, we avoid anxiety. However, this pleasure principle only works so far. Something really weird happens when a kid gets a little bit older. As opposed to, like I showed you a picture of my baby sitting on the floor with the dog food earlier. Why is she eating dog food? She sees the dog eating it, so she'll try it. Does she understand what food and not food is? Little babies don't. They just, anything that's food-like, they will try and eat, which is bad if you let the kid unattended too long, because the cat poop in the yard looks a lot like a food, and the kids eat all sorts of stuff. At the Child Development Center down here, one of the kids was like munching on something. They go, what is that? His entire mouth was full of roly-polies. A lot of little kids, the only thing that, kids can be potty trained when they find poop disgusting. Because like a little kid, like, I'm not going to ask about your child's potty training, but at 1.5, it's like a horror movie. And they're sitting there. But then all of a sudden, at a certain point, they go like this. What happens? Their ego shows up. The ego's reality. Well, it's a little kid will sometimes they'll paint. They'll just play with the poo. Do they understand that it's bad? No. No painting, please. Because it doesn't mean anything to them. But then all of a sudden, through social interaction, they start developing this reality. What does the reality do to the pleasure principle? It didn't destroy it. It manages it. The ego starts to control the id. So like we were babysitting these two. Anybody know the Whitmarsh family? They're local. They live over right by Valhalla. You know, okay, so which one do you know? Ty, Tanner, or the new one? Trevor, that's the new one. Yeah, so we knew Ty and Tanner back when they were young. My wife and I babysat them when they were, Tanner was 2 and Ty was like 4, when the parents went to the 96 Olympics to go watch Mike play. Okay, and so we were parents for like a week with these two little monsters. I don't know how Trevor is, but I've never met Trevor, but he's the new one. But so Ty, on Facebook, they pretty much fish now. That's all I ever see on Facebook. Anyway, but so Ty was always the good one, and Tanner was the crazy one. So he wanted fruit snacks. He's 2. He goes, I'm hungry. Fruit snacks. Why fruit snacks? No, they don't. That's what he wants. That's what Grandma gives him. So if you're a 2-year-old, buy fruit snacks for food. They taste good. So the fruit snacks were on the top shelf in the pantry, and you open the pantry up, and then if you start climbing up the pantry as a 2-year-old, how are shelves generally held in the pantry? They're just, the weight of the shelf is sitting on these little pegs. So if you pull on the front of it, slides up, and all the cans on that go. We hear this scream, and he is lying there with cans all over him, little semicircular dents all over him. And so we called his mom, like, yeah, he just tried to climb the cupboard and got hit with the cans. She goes, oh, he's done that again? Again? So why does he keep doing it? Fruit snacks. He would just call them snacks. Want snacks. Want snacks. Okay, so here's an apple. It's not a snack. That's a snack. Reality. But what do you learn? What controls the ego? Called the superego. Now again, this is Freud coming up with this stuff. Did Freud ever study children? No. Yes. Wait till we get to Jung. But the idea that Freud came up with this stuff, and actually because Freud was so intelligent, he had some issues, but he was very, very intelligent. A lot of the stuff he figured out works. Because the superego, that's your culture. Why was that line blue? Sorry. Okay? No, that line just turned blue for no reason whatsoever. Okay, makes an exciting live recording. So, the superego is your culture, the rules. So when your culture says, food, do you just eat whatever you want? No, who sets the culture when you're 4 or 5? Mom, parents. Your parents are your culture. That is where your superego comes from initially. So your kids learn, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to act. And even though their id wants fruit snacks, what happens if you eat fruit snacks when you're not supposed to? You take them. You feel, well, you punish yourself. You feel guilt. So all of a sudden, this boundary, we have this problem. We have this problem between guilt and anxiety. Guilt is fear of punishment. Anxiety is lack of satisfaction. So that's why it's kind of fun with this stupid app that we're keeping track of our food with. So I think that my son got a banana after his basketball game. And he doesn't like bananas. So he goes, you want to eat this? I'm like, sure. I have not eaten a banana in probably 3 years. Why? I do. I like bananas.
Oh, high calories.
They're a ridiculous amount of sugar.
Oh, come on.
No, it's important. If you're diabetic, should you pay attention to bananas and things? Absolutely. And so I just don't eat them. I enjoy them, but there's a lot of other things I can use to get potassium and other nutrients, and I just don't need bananas. Well, yeah, bananas are just pure, it's basically like a candy bar.
Yeah, it is.
So
Different from the girl bananas, the smaller ones.
the smaller ones have less sugar. That's why you generally have to fry them in butter. Sorry, plantains and those things, good. Less sugar, higher starch. And so like the wild ones that grow around here, they have very little refined sugar in them. So you can get bananas that grow around here. They're about this big, but you got to like cut them and then you fry them with a little bit of butter, a little brown sugar. Good. But I won't do that because sugar. Anyway, but so do I feel guilty for eating the banana? No. I don't feel guilty for eating the banana because, and then I'm going to put this up here. It's called rationalization. My ego can find an excuse for eating the banana. We all do. We rationalize. Why did I rationalize eating a banana? Well, I worked out hard this morning and need potassium so I don't cramp up later.
Like you lie to yourself, exactly.
It's not necessarily a lie, because can I believe it?
Yeah.
Yay! And could I make it plausibly true if I rationalize well?
Yep.
Yeah, it's okay that I'm using heroin now because alcohol's bad for you. Yeah, well, when you start talking about things like very severe amounts of guilt and very severe amounts of anxiety, like the patients Freud saw, you saw very serious rationalization. And so the more serious the rationalization, who is doing this? Who's rationalizing? Yourself isn't involved. It's unconscious. It's your ego.
So, is this kind of where some people they are good in lie and some people...
Yeah, because some people believe, you can rationalize so well that you're not lying.
Like in your face, you'll come and say like...
Well, because if you are, so one of the easiest ones that we can talk about, this is the Weinert family defense mechanism. Denial. Well, we have a lot of substance dependence in our family. And it's just, and the reason we have that, my Aunt June, she died, she has probably bipolar, and she died from a drug overdose years and years ago. My dad died from alcoholism. His dad died from alcoholism. His second, his stepdad died from a massive heart attack because he ate lots of crap. Grandma went through like 4 husbands before she met Jimmy. Jimmy was an older Japanese gentleman. I don't know what his last name. Yeah, Japanese. And he outlived her, but she died from diabetes. But why is denial important? What is it? It's not accepting. So I forgot to write a word here that's really important. Conflict. Denial is not identifying any problem whatsoever. Rationalization is you see the problem, but you make an excuse. It's okay that I ate a banana. I'm going to log it into my app, and I'm going to make sure I cut my rest of my carbs down later. And I can actually, in the rest of my food, I have 3 hard-boiled eggs and a bunch of leftover turkey meatballs, a chunk of salmon, and then a quarter of a bagel that my son didn't finish. Bottom feeder. Cleaning out the fridge. It's still good. I'll eat it. Okay? 3 hard-boiled eggs was a bit excessive, but my wife only wanted 1 egg this morning, so I put the other 2 in there. Yeah.
Is that a problem after?
Yeah, problem. It's not a problem for me. I don't have a problem with my handwriting at all. It's fine. Your fault. That's called projection. Say it louder.
Handwriting is way better than doctor's handwriting. Than mine.
But we can practice sewing pigs together, but you can't practice writing? Practice. Practice. Okay. So I don't. But so projection. When you take the conflict and put it onto someone else. Why did he eat the banana? It's not a very good example for projection, but
Your son's fault.
my son's fault for giving it to me. But you ate it. No. He gave it to me.
What was your option to accept?
Again, the reality is not important. Remember, it's hard to step out of reality, but when you're into this, somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you yell at them for being a jerk. Okay? Why are they the jerk? Why did you just let them in? Because you don't want to let them in, but they're the jerk. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Well, it does, but how do you know they're being a jerk?
Because they don't put their signal on or something. They just.
Well, that's it's not the scenario I said. Is someone cuts in front of you on the freeway, why don't you slow down and let them in?
Because they cut.
Because they cut, and therefore they're a jerk. See? So what happens to your anxiety and guilt? Poof. I don't feel any. No. Denial is the different. You don't even see the problem whatsoever. This is actually when you see a lot of drug dependence. There's a woman who works at the local mailbox store near our house, and she was one of you many years ago. And she wrote a paper for English called Entrenched in Denial. She had been using Soma, which is a muscle relaxer. And it becomes very habit forming, and it's also you develop a really strong tolerance to it, so you have to use a lot of it. She was arrested going across the border with like 300 of the tabs on her, which you're not allowed to do. And so finally, once she got arrested, she had to confront her drug use. And she wrote a paper called, Entrenched in Denial, because she kept saying, well, I don't have a drug problem. And the answer is, yes, you do. How do you know you have a drug problem? You've just been arrested for your drug use. Is it a problem? No, it's not a problem. And then she kept trying to explain why it's not a problem. And finally, with the help of a therapist and a drug counselor, she had to get to that place saying, yeah, I got a problem. Because why do you need to see your problem? So you can stop pretending it's not there and face the damn problem. But this is why we say, well, it's their fault. It's their fault for me using the drugs.
Is that like people who blame, my parents, it's their fault?
My dad always blamed his managers at work for his drinking.
Okay, yeah.
He's the one drinking, but his managers put too much stress on him, therefore he drinks. And it's not my fault. I have to drink because they put too much pressure on me. And we went to the doctors, he had a gallbladder problem, which is a side effect of the liver not working, whatever. And he said, I have gall problems, I need to change my diet. And well, did the doctor tell you to stop drinking? Well, yeah, but that's not it. Well, he's dead now from cirrhosis of the liver. So, yeah, so you can kind of see that. That's why I take a very good care of myself now, because he was 52 when he died. That's 2 years from now for me. Whoa, reality. Okay, and so there's a lot of other defense mechanisms, but what is their main goal? to not change, to maintain self. Your ego is constantly running around. Your id wants what it wants. The rules say don't do it, but the ego is constantly running around. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. The one that Freud talked about most is this one, called repression. Remember, ego. This is your reality. This is what you see. It takes someone else looking at you to go point it out to you. So what is repression? Repression is different than denial.
In Freud's mind, it was edible and political.
But that was just one example of it. So repression is pushing it out, ignoring it, knowing that it's there, but just so like you start worrying about it, and you go like, for me, eating tortillas. We mentioned that before. I like tortillas, and so you just don't think about the number of tortillas that you're eating. You just purposely don't think about it. You don't say 200 calories, 200 calories, 200 calories every time you eat one.
You unconsciously repress it.
Yeah, these are all unconscious. You don't, until you become conscious of it, until you become mindful, the unconscious anxiety is what causes the repression. And that's why usually Thanksgiving is one of my favorite overeating holidays, because I love stuffing. The best thing for me, though, is not being able to process insulin very well. What's happened to my stuffing eating? Can't eat stuffing. It's carbs. It's all bread. And so you stuff it inside of a bird. It soaks full of fat. It's bread and fat. What could be bread and butter? It's better. Perfect. But I don't eat it. And because I don't eat it, do I worry about how much I'm eating? It's very easy for me to be yes or no, black or white. Eat this, don't eat this. It's hard for me to say I'm going to eat a little bit of stuffing. But again, by not thinking about how much I'm eating, that is repression. My wife will always point that out. Wow, you're having a second of that, huh? But why is that good?
Become
Conscious. Because this is all unconscious. You don't realize that you're doing this. There's a bunch of other defense mechanisms, but those are the ones that I really wanted to emphasize. But again, where do these defense mechanisms come from? They come from the ego trying to balance out the id's anxieties. I want, with the superego's, no you can't, no you can't, no you can't. So what would someone be who's like, we talk about someone who's a serial killer, someone has an overinflated ego. They don't feel guilty. Their ego is greater than the rules. So they're basically adult 2-year-olds. And they might be very smart, and they might be able to figure out lots of high-step processes and lots of things, but when they do something, they're worried about getting caught, not worried about doing the wrong thing.
Is this the fact where we go back like they were children?
Again, Freud never studied children. So the answer to that question is, I don't know. Because there's a type of children that we call Teflon children. These Teflon children are kids that are raised in just horrible environments, abusive parents, drug use, all sorts of stuff. The kids walk out and go, and then carry on their life and never a single problem with the rest of their lives. Never any drug dependence, positive social interactions, everything great. But then you see the people that are in the severe lockup in Donovan. Most of them have had severe childhood trauma. So what makes the person who's in the prison with the severe childhood trauma versus the person who's perfectly fine with the severe childhood trauma? If you could figure that out, let me know. I'll put my name on it and we'll submit it for research. Oh, no, I can't do that. Okay. But I mean, that's one of the biggest questions is what turns superhero supervillain? Anyway, if we had that answer, then my YouTube channel would become famous.
Wouldn't that be their interest?
How do you get your interest? It's one of those things, it's like it grows. It's like a plant. So many little things along that plant's life affect the way it grows. it's really hard to see which one has an effect going forward. There's too many variables. So that's why Carl Jung, who was impassioned by Freud, Carl Jung listened to Freud talk when Carl Jung was a young student and was completely on board with the idea of this unconscious mind controlling it. And then Jung was probably certifiably insane. He and Freud talked for about 14 or 15 hours the first time they met. They had this amazing meeting of the minds. And then after about 2 weeks, Freud said, Jung, you're nuts. I don't want anything to do with you. And they completely had a bro breakup. Okay, so let me go through what Jung said, because this is where your test comes from. Okay? Carl Jung said that we all have the same collective unconscious. Okay? And so we all have the same collective unconscious mind. All humans share the same humanity. All of our ancestors' memories are within us. It's called the common collective unconscious. This is really good stuff. You'll like it. Okay, so now, if we all have the same collective consciousness, what separates us? Sorry. Ancestors' memories. What separates us?
What's currently happening?
Say louder.
What's currently... Yeah, versus...
I thought you meant what's currently happening right now, like you're having a dissociative event. I was a little concerned for a second there. No. So what's going on right now, man? Where are we? Okay. So wait, what separates you from me? It's not what's currently happening, because we're actually in the shared experience right now. Our consciousness is in a shared space. So there is differences between us. These differences between us are traits, or types, as Jung liked to call them. He said that there's different types of people. Do family trees have similar types of people on their same family? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a scientist. He was also a math teacher until he actually met students. Then he decided not to be a math teacher. My mom's side of the family, they were all teachers or preachers. On my dad's side of the family, they were all scientists and builders. Yeah.
So this is going to be genetic?
So Jung did not know anything about genetics.
No, I was like, it's not about this one. Like, to be a teacher, like...
Okay, so follow the same thing. So take a step back. What Jung said is that we're all the same, except there's different types of us. So no matter where you go in the world, you can find people who become teachers, who become helpers, who become healers, these basic types of people are found in all societies. Therefore, he says, nice work. Therefore, he says that all of us are really the same person with just slightly different characteristics. This is where this idea of these traits or these types, these scales that came from. This idea of this collective unconscious is kind of strange because, wait, how does somebody over here talk to someone over here? What do you have to do? So, like, I had a student, a Kurdish student 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I'd never met someone who was a Kurd before. And so I'm like, hey, cool. Well, I hadn't met anybody back then. And so I'm talking to him, and he likes lifting weights. I like lifting weights. He has kids. I have kids. The same struggle he's having with his kids, the same struggle that I'm having with my kids. We are very similar on a lot of traits. So how did we find out how we were similar? By talking to each other and finding the common traits. So what happens is back in the 1950s, early 1900s all the way up to 1930s, 1940s, Jung was really popular. Really into this idea, this collective unconscious mind, that these traits, these common human things. There's a group of people called the beatniks in the 30s and 40s started paying attention to this guy. So what they started to do is start to all wear black. Cool, Daddy-O. I'm digging it. And they called everybody brother and sister. Why would you call everybody brother and sister? Someone who's respected called dad. So in other words, we're all the same brothers and sisters on the planet, man. I dig your crazy vibe. In other words, I respect your individuality. But at the same time, we're all the same people. Why would just wear black? You're wearing black. Just calling the kettle. But that was subtle, but it was funny. Okay. But if everybody wears black, what separates us? Nothing. We're all the same. And then we'd listen to poetry that doesn't make sense. And Allen Ginsberg would take a newspaper and chop it up in little bits and then rearrange all the words and make poems. But how did they make sense? Well, if you just read them on the surface, they don't make sense. But as you sit and discuss this really strange poem, everybody starts bringing meaning to the poem. And the collective consciousness of understanding is greater than the individual understanding. Communists love this crap. Science? Did Jung do any science? No. He just sat and thought this stuff up. He's kind of right, though. Like Freud, he never studied kids, but he understood how to train children properly and how to look at the child's conflicts at different times in their lives to help ease their anxieties during different times of their lives and the different conflicts they go through. Take more developmental, you can learn a lot more about that. But this is where this test comes from. I'm not going to go through the whole lineage of it, but I'm going to write this word. There's a process called factor analysis. Okay, factor analysis means I'm going to look at two characteristics of a person and what probability are those two characteristics related to each other. They calculate probabilities of characteristics. So a guy by the name of Gordon Allport had his graduate students find words that mean happy. Okay, so give me a word that means happy. Good. Joy. Gay. Enthusiastic, satisfied. Jubilant, cheerful. Bliss. That's a good happiness. Yeah. Okay. I'm eating a chocolate in my head right now. Okay, but so do they all mean the same basic happy if we whittle it down to the same factor? Yeah, they're all different. And bliss is different than satisfaction, which is different than contentment, which is different than being gay versus jubilant versus excited and glee. Okay, but it still whittles down to the same thing. And so with the factor analysis, Gordon Allport went from 14 or 15,000 words down to like 16. And then researchers reanalyzed the data and they came up with the traits that you did. And the traits are labeled as ocean. Openness. Conscientiousness. Extroversion. Agreeableness and neuroticism. So, wait, where does this a basic idea that humans have traits come from? Crazy old tree man. Because he brought this idea that there are different types of people into the literature, a whole series of scientists started looking for these types of people, and they found these 5. It works very well. So let's go through them again. Openness. Conscientiousness. Spell that one. Extroversion. Agreeableness. And my favorite, neuroticism. Okay, so these are different than the types that Jung did. Jung said that people are helpers, people are doctors, people are like millers and miners. The different, literally different careers is what I keep saying it, is what Jung came up with. And actually there's a test that many of you have probably taken if you've taken counseling called the Myers-Briggs Typology Assessment. That's based on Carl Jung's wacky ideas. And the Myers-Briggs, if you take that, I have a link if anybody wants to take it. But if you take that class, it tells you what career you're likely to be suited for, what type of person you are. They're very good for forming focus groups. So if I gave the Myers-Briggs to a group of students, I could form groups based on your personality profiles, and your group would become more effective. It would really be funny if I put a bunch of artists together in a group. What happens if you put a bunch of artists together in one group? Well, you don't get anything done. Everybody's thinking abstractly. If I put a bunch of control freaks in one group, they all argue about who's going to be in control. A bunch of extroverts in a group have a lot of fun but never get anything done. A lot of introverts in a group all work independently and never form a group. But if I take an introvert, extrovert, if I mix the group properly based on what I need, I can get better results. That's what that test is for. A lot of HR, human resources, love this test. Okay, so what does openness mean? Let's go through these and see what your results are. Yeah. Someone who is openness is willing to try new things. So if, like when I showed the sushi with the salmon roe, someone was like, bring it on, let's give it a try. That's a perfect example of openness. Someone who is close-minded, it doesn't mean that they are necessarily a negative or a bad thing. It just means that new experiences are generally stressful for them. Okay, keep this in mind. So if you have low openness scores, what should you choose at a restaurant? Something that you're used to, something that you recognize. Because if you choose something, you might like it, but you might not. But if you choose something that you recognize, you're much more likely to be happy. So does it mean you can't step out of yourself? Does it mean, anybody ever watch Amazing Race? In here, I thank you for watching it. No one else watches that anymore. It's a really fun show. Our family used to watch that whenever it was on years ago. And it was always fun because that show is full of forcing people to try new things. And you can see some of the people on the show like, okay, here's a lamb's liver, go for it. Some guy's like, chomp. All right, kind of disgusting. Tastes like a foot. All right, I'm good. Other people are like, and then trying to gag it down, and it's awesome. Okay, so now, what if you are forced to be open a lot? What if you're forced to try new things all the time? Well, hold on. Can you play the role of being open to new experiences in your social self? Yes. So this is something we call, it's your personal self or the social self. You can play the role of being open. But what does that put you under if you are not open? Stress. But it doesn't mean you can't be open. Like conscientiousness. Conscientiousness means rules. It's not mindfulness, it's rules. Someone who's very conscientious pays attention to their behavior and how it affects the people around them. So like, I am very messy. And because I'm very messy, my office mate is very neat and tidy. And so my office is about as neat and tidy as it's ever been in the history of me in that office, because forever I was in there by myself. And so when I'm in there by myself, there was just crap everywhere. And there's still crap everywhere, but it has more purpose and intent than it did before. But why am I trying to keep it cleaner?
Because you're conscious of the other person.
Yeah, because Dr. Salazar is neat and tidy and keeps things nice. And as a result, I'm respecting her. Even though my normal conscientious scores are extremely low, I'm very messy. Why do I keep our house very nice and neat? Because it's important for my wife for things to be nice. She has very, very high conscientiousness scores. Very high. And I'm very low. What are most of our arguments and fights about? That. That's it. Not doing laundry properly, not folding things properly, not keeping things neat and clean.
Yeah, sometimes I take it seriously.
It's because it's what makes there's the personal self and the social self. And that's what's really fun. Every so often my wife will just say, man, forget it, and leave a mess. And I start getting nervous and panicking that there's a mess. And then she's like, role reversal. Because it's like, But so have we come together on conscientiousness? Kind of. But at the same time, she has not been in my office for 15 years. She won't come back. Because she visualizes, she goes, it's like your old apartment was when we first started dating. And I'm like, yeah. But when we share space, I change because my social self's conscientiousness is going to be slightly different. Like I should have totally graded these the other day until I opened my bag this morning. I totally forgot. That's low conscientiousness right there. A high conscientious person was as soon as you handed them in, I'd be scanning them all, but I went fishing with my son instead because it was more important.
So they're still normal people.
Yes, all of you are normal people.
I'm like this.
No, that's fine, but it's good. But why should you know that? Why is it important to know this? To become conscious of it. I know that I'm a low conscientious person. Because I'm a low conscientious person, that's why I deleted the games and the Instagram and stuff off my phone. Because it's distractions that I don't need. And so there's other things that I want to accomplish and finish, and I need to get my semester starting, so I'm not finishing some things because I'm forcing myself to be more conscientious. But that's, again, so extroversion. I'm irritating. I am 91% extrovert. Okay? For those introverts in here, I'm annoying. I'm wearing a lime green shirt with a rainbow brain on it today. We chose the color of the shirts based on the different colors within the brain. The purple ones are coming next year. Okay, so, but the idea of, why would an extrovert like this shirt? Or my orange sweatshirt? It's bright. It's fun. It's invigorating. And on the back, it says, okay, nature to be commanded must be obeyed. It looks better on the black shirt. I have nerd stuff on my giant orange sweatshirt with a brain on it. I've had discussions. This one lady was asking me about, she was recovering from bipolar, and she's talking to me in the Mexican restaurant with the shrimp burrito. All right, okay. And so, why would I sit and talk with her about this? Because I'm extroverted, I'm wearing a neon orange shirt with a brain on it. People are going to look. I will play with my yo-yo when walking across Nordstrom's. To my wife's chagrin. Okay, but because she is 91% introvert. Well, 1% extrovert. Or I forget what it is. I think she's a 7 or 8. Can she act extroverted? Yes. She has to. She's an elementary school principal. She has to say the flag with everybody in the morning. She has to say hi to everybody. She knows every single kid, every single parent, car, name, and everything. So a car comes to pick up a kid. She's like, I don't know who that is. And she goes over and talks to them. Because she treats her school like her family. And she tells every single kid. Okay, and it's funny because her introverty self, is that a lot of work for her introvert self? Yeah, I can come and be with hundreds of people every day. My extrovert self is like, woohoo! I get home, I'm like, I'm not tired at all. She gets home and she's exhausted. She wants to sit by the fireplace and watch stupid TV show or online shopping, or, which we're going to really curb, but she'll sit and just zen and focus on something for a while. When she has a chance, she loves reading because reading is perfect introvert behavior. Where's all the events happening? In your mind, internally. Does it mean they're not social? No, introverts are very social, but they tend to like to, after their social time, they like to be quiet, stop being social. A lot of times introverts like to have a person. They don't have a giant social group. They have their person that they hang with. It's very good, but it's a different personality. So can I be introverted? It's harder for me, but that's why I like to do kind of stupid extreme sports. So when I'm off doing stuff by myself, I'm jumping my bike on top of picnic tables. And I'm not really doing it necessarily so other people go, that's rad, dude. Or tattooed stomach guy at the skate park trying to help me out. I wasn't drinking enough, he says. I need, here, have some, yeah, that's okay. 9 o'clock in the morning. He's almost finished his first 40. He's teaching his kid to skateboard without a helmet, so that's good. Okay. But he had some good advice. When you go off the top, you got to lean back and just peg it. Just go for it. Okay, my scaredness was too high for that. But anyway. So, what about agreeableness? What's agreeableness? Argumentative. That's what we were talking about before. If you have low agreeableness, that means you tend to fight back fast. Okay? Is that a bad thing? No. It's not a bad thing. That means you don't get walked over. But it does make you, if once you test this and you see, wow, I have really low agreeableness, when someone says something, your initial response is, rah, and then go, wait. But people we use the word assertive as well. But if you are assertive, if you do have that low agreeableness, you get more. What if you're completely agreeable all the time? People walk all over you. As someone who's very, very high agreeableness, it actually works very well because my wife, whatever she wants for dinner, fine. I don't care. I've learned that mantra as my dad's self, and my life is so much better. I don't care. Can you fold the laundry every day? Sure. Why fight that? Because it's not manly. I've got a 150-pound kettlebell I need to play with, so I'm fine. I've got enough manliness in my life. I can fold laundry every day. Every day this week I've washed and folded the laundry and put it away. And put away.
Wow,
Thank you. Today's going to be tough, though, because we found out my son has been hoarding clothes in his room, and he put them all in the hamper, and it was full last night. It's the whole load of all of his crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what'll happen? He'll be out of clothes for like 3 and wear the same thing for like 4 days in a row. And okay.
Yeah.
No, but he'll stink. No, it's I sit next to him. He's 13.
Yeah. He can do it.
I know he can. But when my parents made me do it, I never washed my clothes and stank. So, okay. So let's go to the last one here. So neuroticism.
What it says?
Stability.
That's wrong.
Negatives.
Well, people don't like the term neuroticism because when you call someone neurotic, it has a negative stigma associated with it. What it means is emotional stability. So if someone has low neuroticism, that means that they're very emotionally stable. I have very low neuroticism. I'm very much the same all the time. I yelled at my son. I forget what he was doing.
Hoarding clothes.
No, I don't care. That doesn't affect my life very much at all. But he was doing something. He was smacking me with something, and I was getting really irritated with it. And I finally just yelled at him really loudly in his face. I was getting really irritated. And my daughter pokes her head out of her room. She was studying. She's like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard you yell like that before. And because I don't really get upset or riled up. Because Evidently, my Pomeranian self doesn't get too riled up by things. But what if you're very high neuroticism?
Oh, everything's making yes.
Everything makes you whoosh, whoosh. Okay. So if you're choosing a Tinder date, what should you choose?
A low, if you're high, a low.
Okay, openness, high or low?
Hi.
High openness, good, you're figuring this out. Conscientiousness,
Hi.
Well, if it's
following the rules, or let's see what happens.
uh,
Low conscientiousness, high openness. Extrovert, definitely extrovert. Okay, agreeableness, yes, high agreeableness and high neuroticism. Why? No, very unstable.
Control of their emotions.
You don't want control of their emotions. Wild ride. The lows are low, but the highs are. So the joke is, and again, I'm going to get fired now, but the joke is, look for the extrovert neurotic in which to date. Who do you marry? The introvert stable. Anyway, so it's kind of funny, but at the same time is, so why do opposites really attract? No. Certain characteristics about people make them more attractive to you. Okay, you tend to be very fascinated or interested in people who are different than you. But what turns out, what makes relationships last, it's not necessarily your traits, but it's not necessarily your personal self, but it's really actually how these traits function in the social self. If you are so stuck in your traits, when you meet someone who is different than you, and you refuse to change, can you change? If you refuse to change, you're not going to change. And can you change somebody? No. You can't fix people. But you can learn to work with people. I'm going to go back to this. What makes a good relationship?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if, when people get married and they say you changed me for the better?
Yeah, that's because both people spend time growing together. I'm a much better house-trained person than I was before I got married. I am much more successful, and I guarantee I would be working at a research lab. I'd probably have an ulcer. I'd probably be dead from high blood pressure at this point if I hadn't met my wife. But because I met her, the girl that I was dating before my wife was a research scientist, and she loved the research science world, and I loved the research science world, so we were happily getting ulcers together and stressed out working in research. But because we both shared that, my wife hated the research lab. Because? Well, no, I didn't think about that. But she hated it because it took all of my time. And she had limited time because she's training to be a teacher. And so when she wanted to spend time with me, she wanted to spend time with me and not fight for lab time for me. So as a result, I went to teaching because I really enjoyed teaching. And the professor that I worked for told me, you're going to be unhappy if you go into a career of research. And I said, okay. And so I went, with my agreeableness, I went into teaching. Yeah.
That kind of happened to me too with my major.
So why did you choose kinesiology?
I chose kinesiology because it was like my passion, but when I used to do engineering classes, I was stressed out. I hated it. When I went to class, I just wanted to just leave. And my friends would tell me, you're gonna hate it, and
Well, it's something that you get so caught up in this idea that what you want to do, that that's why I tell every single student if they have the opportunity to volunteer. Volunteer at whatever job that you think you want to do. Take the time and just go do it. Like you're working at the psych hospital, and if you want to be a psych nurse and you really love going to work every day, you found the right job. Because it doesn't mean it's not hard. It just means the intrinsic side of it. And that's the thing, is that what is reinforcing for you, we go all the way back down to this, do these change over time? Not really. The social self does change over time. You can learn to become extroverted at times. But this is the important part. My wife is much better at talking in front of her school. She's really good about going and talking to parents and interacting with everybody. She's learned to play the extrovert role. But what does she have to do? Repair. She has to go home and be quiet and repair. So when she's had a stressful day, we have our app on our phone, which we are a stalking app. So we click on the little app here. So my daughter's at school, my son is at school, and I can see where my wife is. Grandpa's at home. I'm at Cuyamaca, and there's my wife up in Alpine. Okay? And so why is it important to, when on her way home? Why do I care that she's on her way home? Yeah, she will. Not worried about that.
To feel comfortable inside that.
So we run around the house to make sure it's peaceful when she walks in. I mean, like when we were making Play-Doh the other day, there was Play-Doh being thrown at each other from my daughter, myself, and my son, and it's just chaos. Playing ball in the house and all sorts of insane low conscientiousness behavior. But right before she comes home, what do?
Clean it.
Power down, clean up, turn lights on, get the fire going in the fireplace. We call it DEFCON 0, defense condition 0, go, go, go! Clean the kitchen, find the dog. But anyway, where's the dog? Oh no. She's in the neighbor's yard eating their cat food. Okay, but it's one of those things where why do we do that?
Because you know that's what she wants.
That's because that makes her more happy and comfortable when she gets home.
So your consciousness goes through to her.
Our conscientiousness adapts to the level of conscientiousness we're around her. We're still working on it with my son. He still doesn't get the fact that he should keep his room clean. He doesn't get the fact that he should not just have gas at the dinner table. And all of us try not to laugh. Because why shouldn't you have gas at the dinner table?
It's rude.
It's rude. It's gross. It might stink. We don't know. You just got to wait for it. Lofting? Okay, sorry. But he also, if he's on a date with a little young lady, what might happen? Yeah! What if you just get so used to something and all of a sudden it's like you just watch power down. Okay, oops, missed that one. So why train people to play the role?
Because this is the role.
Because it's the role. And we have roles, but again, once you learn to play the role, that's your social self. And the more you practice playing the role, your social self is actually no different. My wife goes to work and doesn't like stress about going to work anymore. The first 2 years she was a principal, her stomach would hurt every day driving up to work. Because?
She would hate going to work.
She hated it, but she hated it because it caused her tremendous amounts of stress. Now, she has no problem. She goes to work. And yes, things at her job do cause her stress, but they don't physically cause her stress anymore. They cause her mental stress. And that's just practice. Okay, so let me go back and see if this crashed or not. End stream.